everybody. Hey, welcome to Team Talk Tuesday. This is a special 30-minute coaching clinic. I am Yoon from Paramount Business Coach, and I'm here with Paul Visokey from Stony Hill Advisors. So, Paul, you want to say hi to everybody?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Good to have an opportunity to speak with you.
All right. Excellent. So this is something we're offering as a gift, our gift to you, particularly during the summer when it's perhaps a little bit slow on your side as running the business, and you really have a great opportunity to start working on the business and submit some questions that you've got, and we're going to tackle them. So it's 30 minutes. It's a laser coaching call. We're going to jam pack a whole lot, as much as we can in the time that we have together. I know I have a few questions that came in, and Paul, you've also got a few questions that came in. So how about I'll start with one and then refer to you. I see I have a Charles from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and he is asking, so we are talking about Team Talk Tuesdays. That means for those of you who are business owners and you've got a team, this is the time to ask your questions related to your employees. So Charles from Cherry Hill, New Jersey is asking, they stopped doing weekly and bi-weekly staff meetings, and he stopped organizing them, knowing how to run a good meeting. Okay, I guess he says he doesn't really know how to run a good meeting. He knows that the younger people, they do want that, but he did stop running them. So I'm gleaning the question from Charles sounds like, how do you run a good meeting? So I've definitely got a bunch of tips on that. Paul, before I jump in with my tips, do you have any quick comments you want to start off with?
Well, we both have a lot of experience with sales meetings in particular. In my many years of head of sales for various companies, I always tried to make the meetings consistent and standing agendas that everyone knew what to expect, and so you wouldn't catch anyone off guard. But there's more to it than just that. We can talk more.
So I like that. It's important that they have an agenda, and not everybody has a written agenda. You know, sometimes you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're just, have a few things in your head that you want to address to your team. So I think that's an important tip that I notice is forgotten about with a lot of the business owners I work with. So a couple of thoughts that I want to share is having a structure. I've used this 5-part structure for years. I mean, I started using this 25 years ago, and I still use it today, when I'm asked to step in and demonstrate running a meeting, so to speak. So this is an easy one to follow, and it really accomplishes a lot of things. But for the first part of my 5-part framework I want to share is one, kicking off with recognition. It's important that you be able to, make your people feel good about the progress that they're making and the potential you see in their strengths. And so sometimes I hear from business owners that, well, what if, that's what they're supposed to do? Why should I recognize them for doing their job? And that's probably the number one pushback that I hear from entrepreneurs that I work with. And my response to that is, well, your people, they need to feel like they're making progress, and they also need to hear the encouragement that they're doing a good job, even if it is something that they're hired to do anyway. So look for anything to encourage, behaviors you want to encourage, even the effort, even encouraging things like, all right, well, Bob, I appreciate you giving me the update that we're behind schedule, on this project. And so even if it's not, wow, you've exceeded the deadlines, but the part you are recognizing is that they came to you right away to give you the negative status update. And so you want something to recognize, but a couple of key things when you're in an in-person meeting. Actually, you could even do this in a virtual meeting for those of you who have a virtual team. But I always liked writing it out all over the meeting room, like on an easel pad. and just being able to say, way to go, Katie, for having your best week ever on XYZ, or way to go, Joe, for closing the most deals this week. So having that written out, so even throughout the meeting, when you're past the recognition part of the staff meeting, they still see that. It doesn't have to be a gold engraved plaque for anything spectacular, but really a handwritten with a marker and an easel pad. Just tape it on the wall. It doesn't have to be fancy, but they see it and they feel good. So you can do that equivalent if you're running virtual meetings by simply writing something on your PowerPoint and sharing your screen with the rest of the team. So I can't say enough about recognition because they want to keep doing that behavior. They're motivated to they end up getting addicted, to getting recognized. Don't you think, Paul?
Yes, and it brings out the competitiveness. If you're in sales, you're usually highly competitive in nature. So getting that kind of recognition makes you want to do it again and get the and compete with the others in terms of being the king of the hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? If you guys should go on Glassdoor.com. And of course, that's the site where employees like to post information about their employers in an anonymous fashion. And so that's probably a site that, as the business owner, you don't frequent as much, but it really tells you a lot about what makes people tick and what makes them stick. And so that, I find, is one of the most pervasive complaints on Glassdoor or Indeed, any of these reviews, where employees are leaving because they're saying, I don't feel like I'm recognized. I don't feel like I'm ever told a good job. The managers or the boss is always breathing down your neck. They always tell you what you're doing wrong, and they make you feel like a failure, so to speak. But that's the buzzword. The key word I see all the time on Glassdoor is I don't feel recognized. So that's a huge point, and I don't want to sit there too long. So the second point is information. This is where you want to get the housekeeping out of the way, communications, updating people. That's another thing that you see on Glassdoor. Employees, disgruntled employees saying, oh my gosh, there's just the lack of communication. They're so disorganized. Management is disorganized. And so that's important to have that on the agenda. So Paul, you referred to a written agenda, so key. So yes, having it written down, but having a section of what information needs to get communicated. That's housekeeping or FYI or new things, new updates. The third part of this 5-part framework I wanted to share around Charles's question is, so we talked about recognition, information, then we're going to go into inspiration. And Paul, you just said, people, especially in sales, they're really motivated by a competitive spirit.
Yes.
But if if some of your team members are having a rough week, whether they're on your sales team or whether they're in a different department, if they're having a frustrating week of hitting their metrics, then it's key to have a peer member be able to share how they achieved XYZ metric or win, accomplishment, and how they did it. And so prep them in advance on how to give a 10-minute or 15-minute talk that is an instructional talk, but it serves to be inspirational because their peer group members are sitting around the table and they're in the same role and they're saying, hey, you know what? Oh my gosh, if Dan can do this, I can do this. And they get really fired up about beating Dan next week or outdoing him, or they get encouraged, and or sometimes both, of course. They get encouraged by saying, oh, I know it could be done. I just knew it. He did it. It can be done. And I hate to refer back to Glassdoor, but it tells you so much data on what you can learn on how to run a good meeting. Because the other piece of the complaints you see all over on Indeed and Glassdoor are things like, oh my gosh, my company, or my boss, they give you metrics that are too hard, too impossible to hit. their expectations are way too high. And so you eliminate that perception when you include somebody as a peer member during the staff meeting to give a little talk on how they did it. Okay, so it can be done is really what it's saying to them. So we've got recognition, information, inspiration. The next piece would be instruction. And this is coming from you as the business owner, you as their boss, manager. And so ongoing training is an important piece. So if you want people to do a better job and keep raising the bar on their performance, then you do want to equip them with the training that they need. So sometimes the training, yeah, it could be straight from you, but if there's something you don't have time to prepare, oh my gosh, I mean, in today's world, you have access to so much easy training. Whether it's an online course like at lynda.com, I've got my own online courses that my clients use for their team. There's so much other training you can purchase that you can show snippets of, or maybe the whole thing, during a staff meeting. So you do want to have a training component so people are learning new things. They're always learning, they're always growing. So instructions, that fourth piece, and the fifth element would be motivation. And so this is what I like to call a wind-up talk, particularly for sales, if you're talking about your sales team. But really, it should be done even for any kind of a meeting. You could have a staff meeting with your admin team, or your crew. If you're a builder and you're in construction trade industry and you've got, a manual labor crew, guess what? They still need to be motivated too. And so you want to really have your finger on the pulse on where everyone's heads are at, what they're struggling with. Do they need an attitude adjustment talk that week? Is somebody being negatively influenced by a person who's, kind of the bad apple of the barrel? So that's a different motivational talk than maybe that particular week your entire team is giving it their all, but they're just really struggling and not hitting any wins. So that's a different motivational talk where you really need to encourage them. And so that's an important factor, that they get re-excited and re-energized about your vision, about the mission, and about how they fit into your family there, as a business. So for Charles, that was for you, who asked, you don't really know how to run a good meeting. You know that the younger people want that, and they sure do. They need leadership. They need good leadership, and these meetings can't happen quarterly. That's just way too long. They're going to die on the vine, by then. They do need to be regular, so weekly or bi-weekly. But there's a 5-part framework I wanted to share. Paul, do you want to add anything to the how to run a good meeting question?
Yes, and I'll just take it off on a very slight tangent. When I'm asked by business owners how to improve the value of the business, one of them is this whole process of creating a meeting structure and having the training, as you mentioned, inclusive in that process on a regular basis. A well-trained organization is appreciated by a potential acquirer. So it really has multiple purposes besides helping you grow your business. It helps you improve the value of the business also over time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't agree with that more. Having a system and a process that your entire organization, this is what they know, this is the drill, this is how things get done. And it also makes it easier if you have an unforeseen unforeseen circumstance where somebody has to step down. I've had people quit, because they got married or getting married, they got divorced, they're just moving, and so they've got an elderly parent they have to suddenly take care of. So you've got key people that sometimes have to suddenly leave. And so when you've got this habit and this success habit of constantly training your people, then the next person in line, they're going to be a lot more ready to take over because they've already been in the training meetings all year long. So good question. Now, Paul, I think you had a question that came through on your side too.
Well, yes, as I was mentioning just a minute ago, we're asked often about how to improve the value of a business, and one of the key areas that I recommend is having the owner become slightly independent of the business, not being involved in every decision, every proposal for a customer, every acquisition of a product, new product, or getting involved with the buyer side of the business, or having a personal relationship with every key customer. The more you can separate that, the better. And interestingly, you said something that triggered a thought, Yoon. Not only do employees sometimes have to leave suddenly, in one case recently with a business I'm representing, the owner had to leave the business suddenly because of a parent who was very ill in Florida, who had retired, and this business owner had to be able to leave the business behind and let the business continue without his personal involvement. And if the business is well prepared for that event, everything continues on without a hitch. So organizing and documenting policies, procedures, and training methods, and having key people know their responsibilities is so important.
Yeah, I love that. That's such an important point that people just don't anticipate. It's just stuff you don't want to think about might happen. But that's why you've got advisors like yourself, Paul, who really put these things out on the table. So I think that's super key. All right. So I have another question that came in. Carl is a builder from, this is funny, a builder from Boulder, Colorado. So say that fast 3 times. Carl, builder from Boulder, Colorado, says he's frustrated employees don't do exactly what he wants them to do. So how do you want to comment on that one, Paul?
That's leadership. That's a hard one to step into someone else's shoes. All I can say is if you have the processes in place, they know what is expected, and then you can follow up and measure what they are getting done along the lines of what you want them to do. If there's not a clear understanding of what it is expected from the individual employees, and it is hard to get them to do what you want them to do.
That's interesting. So I wish I had more information to explain that, but that's it. It was a 1-line sentence. Frustrated employees don't do exactly what he wants them to do. So I'd have to say, you know what? I'd say my response is it depends. If the question Carl is asking, what can I do about these employees who don't do exactly what I want them to do? My answer would be it depends. So maybe sometimes the situation is that you can ask yourself, am I micromanaging my employees? And so you might not think you're micromanaging. Usually people don't realize they micromanage. They're not aware. But think about this. If you're hiring somebody at a higher level position, all right, then you're hiring them for their expertise. You're hiring them for their ability to make decisions and be a critical thinker. So, there's 10 different ways to skin a cat, so to speak. I hate to use that phrase, but if they can achieve the same outcome goal that you're looking for them to do, but they might go about it a little differently, then I think you could put that in the bucket of micromanaging, having to do exactly the way you want them to do it. So just give that some thought, and you have to scrutinize each instance to really decide, am I micromanaging, or is there a significant negative impact to the business because they're doing the particular project or task the wrong way? And if it's the latter, and they really are doing the wrong way, they don't follow directions, well, I think that could get nipped in the bud in the interviewing process. Giving your candidates a second interview opportunity for them to demonstrate that they can follow directions. That can get nipped in the bud in personality assessments, getting a DISC profile, Colby test, those types of things. So if it's an issue of, gosh, this person just cannot follow directions, then that should have gotten nipped earlier. But if it's happening now,
Right.
the third scenario I want to offer is this: don't wait till the next performance review, which typically are quarterly or once a year or twice a year. That's way too long. Do not wait till a performance review to bring stuff like this up. I'd say you've got to address it immediately. And just ask them, hey, Jane, John, whoever you're talking to, can I talk to you privately for 5 minutes? And so the key word there is privately. You never want to give criticism, constructive criticism, in front of other people. It's key to have scheduled one-on-one meetings with your people. But even if it's not scheduled, if there's something going awry, then ask them for a quick 5 minutes. And I would just ask them. So I'm just curious, what was your thought around this? Why you did X, Y, Z project, the way that you did, and you find out from them what was their thinking around it. And then you give them feedback. And the way that you give feedback would be, I would ask them, you got to ask permission. So just like I'm always telling my clients, we're in a world of permission-based marketing, asking permission to market. Well, it's the same thing with management. It's not permission-based, because gosh, they are your employees, but asking them, hey, can I give you some feedback? And they have to get mentally ready to say, yes, I would like your feedback. And for you to say, great, well, you know what? I would appreciate, John, if the feedback is, we've got a written process for a reason. And my feedback is for you I'd like to see you be able to follow the process and follow the directions exactly the way we formulated it to be. So could you do that for me next time? That's it.
Let me add, if I could,
Yeah.
the concept of micromanaging, the thing that you have to think about sometimes in a management role is it more important that I get the result than dictating how someone does something? Sometimes an employee can come up with a better solution, a better way to get to the end result that you desire. So think about, is it doing it exactly this way, or is it all right to do it another way, but it gets to where we need to go?
Absolutely. Amen. Amen to that, Paul. And I got to attest, I've had many situations, even with my own team, where just that has happened. So I have thought through, okay, here's a step-by-step checklist on how to do blah, blah, blah. And I'll have, my assistant, Michelle, will come around and say, show me how she came up with a better way to do it, and I love it. I love when that happens. In fact, I have it in my employee handbook, and it's just short. It's not like 50,000 pages or anything. It's a few pages. But one of the first things I have in there is, I am looking for you to come up with better ways to do stuff. So we have a process, but it doesn't mean it's the most efficient process. It's just happened to be the most efficient we could think of at the time, And so oftentimes my team members, I have a woman, Josie, and another woman, Michelle, they find shortcuts. They find tools that I didn't even know of, and they work better. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that just shaved, another hour and a half off of the process. How great is that? And then they get recognized for it. So I have to say that has happened to me a number of times. I love when that happens. All right, so I hope that helped you, Carl, on your question about employees not doing exactly what you want them to do. And so please keep in mind, consider both sides of the coin, whether or not you might be micromanaging, all right? Or perhaps you have the wrong types of people who just can't follow directions. Or the third scenario would be giving them immediate feedback like that. Okay, so I have another question that came through, and this is actually a past client of mine, Rhonda. And Rhonda writes in, Rhonda's from Dubai. She writes in, how can I prepare my business and processes to delegate tasks to different VAs and part-time co-facilitators. So, Paul, you have any thoughts you want to start with that question? How can I prepare my business and processes to delegate tasks?
I'd have to know a little bit more about the business, but basically delegating a task is, like we've been talking a moment ago, is defining what you want as a goal, as an end result. What are we trying to accomplish, and have everyone understand that's the goal, and then delegate the responsibility, and in some cases provide some specific direction on how you might accomplish that goal. But delegation is about defining what you want done and letting them do it.
Absolutely. That's the magic, what you just said, Paul, letting them do it. Right? So we were just talking about micromanaging, and that's where I see how a big personality trait that's common in a lot of entrepreneurs is, just wanting to get it done the way you want, right? And so that's important. That's a hard skill. It's a hard thing to get past that point where you just let people do things and let them mess up if that happens. Because if you make them feel like the world is over every time they mess up, they're not going to even want to try. The one piece I would add to that question for Rhonda is delegating tasks. It's really important to know what your core skill sets are in a particular project. And so a big project always has a lot of moving parts. And I think the number one thing that hurts entrepreneurs in this question, in this capacity, is expecting too much of any one person. Everybody's got their unique skills, talents, and strengths, and trying to ask, think of it as being a builder. You're trying to ask one person to be the expert as the electrician, be an expert plumber, be an expert architect, be the expert, I don't know, what else is there? Roofer.
Carpenter.
All right, carpenter. Yeah, you know what I mean? So if you think of it in the context of building a home, you just wouldn't do that. You wouldn't hire somebody to build like a 5,000 square foot home and expect one person to go and do all those specialties. So it's really the same thing in your business, even if it's something as consolidated as you might think, as perhaps an online marketing project, right? And so even in the world of marketing, you don't expect a web developer to have the skills of a web designer. Those are two different skill sets and training. You don't expect that person to be a copywriter. You don't expect that same person to be a graphic designer. So you can't rely on just delegating, okay, I'm going to hand our website redesign project to you, this one person, and you're responsible for doing all four areas of specialty. And so that's the big piece of aha I hope you take away, Rhonda, for your question. How do you prepare your business? What you do to prepare is really understanding what are the core skill sets that is needed for each piece of the project. So I hope that helps. I can talk forever on that subject, but we promised a 30-minute laser coaching clinic. So we're at the end already.
Right.
It goes
quickly.
So it does. It does. And I just want to make sure in the last minute here, did we miss any other questions that came in on your side?
No, I think we covered everything. And maybe if there's something that people have additional questions, we can talk about next Tuesday.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to invite our listeners. So today was Team Talk Tuesday call number 2. We've got 2 more on the docket. And if you'd like to join us, you have to register. And so just go to ParamountBusinessCoach.com and you'll be able to see a blog post that is talking about how to motivate your team. And when you click on that blog post, you'll be able to click the big sign up button and sign up for our next Tuesday, Team Talk Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern. It's a 30-minute free coaching clinic. And if that was way too many directions for you, you can also just call. You can call me at 215-292-4947. Call or text. Say, hey, I want to register for the next Team Talk Tuesday at 12 noon. So we'd love to tackle your questions to help you be able to motivate your employees so you can grow your business. So that's a wrap for today.
Thanks, Yoon.
Yeah, no problem, Paul. We'll talk to everybody next week. Take care.
Have a good week. Okay, bye.